Hey, Bina. Good morning, my relatives. Today is Thursday, March 7th. I'm sitting here with my second cup of coffee, and I wanted just to have a chat about some of the things going on in our country, as well as a few things coming up in my schedule and just some things I'm working on these next few weeks and months. Before I begin, let me do like I always do, which is acknowledge I'm speaking to you from Piscataway lands. It's now called Washington, D.C., but the Piscataway are the hosts of the lands where I live, and I want to thank them for their stewardship of these lands. And I just want to remind all of us how humble we should conduct ourselves, knowing that we are living and walking on lands inhabited, stewarded by people other than the United States of America. So thank you, my Piscataway relatives. Thank you for your stewardship of the lands where I live today. So there's a few things I want to talk about today. This show is actually going to end up having a lot of components about Abraham Lincoln. It's not focused on Lincoln, but I'm going to talk a little bit about Lincoln throughout this show. And both some of the history of Lincoln, as well as some work I'm doing to try to expose Lincoln a bit more in the broader public. And so, but before I begin, I want to start just yesterday. I was watching the news, and on my news feed, AP ran a story about the day in history. This was on March 6th of 2024. And so before I go into that, I want to just bring out a quote about Lincoln, right? So let's talk a little bit about Lincoln. If you follow me, if you listen to my social media and you follow my lectures, or you've read my book on Selling Truths, you'll know that once I usually begin my lectures when I talk about Abraham Lincoln, and I say, because America has never won a war, that has never lost a war that matters, and because the United States has therefore written its own history, because again, the victors write the history, we actually don't know who Abraham Lincoln is. And so in my lectures, I generally introduce Abraham Lincoln to my audiences the same way he introduced himself to the country when he ran for Senate in 1858. Back in that day, it was widely known that Lincoln wasn't widely known, but what was known about him was that he was against the institution of chattel slavery. And so in the Lincoln-Douglas debates, when he introduced himself, he had to clarify where he stood on issues of race. And so he said on September of 1858, I will say then that I am not, nor ever have been in favor of bringing about in any way the social and political equality of the white and black races. That I am not, nor ever have been in favor of making voters or jurors of Negroes, nor of qualifying them to hold office, nor to intermarry with white people. He went on to say, I will say in addition to this that there is a physical difference between the white and black races, which I believe will forever forbid the two races living together on terms of social and political equality. And inasmuch as they cannot so live while they do remain together, there must be the position of superior and inferior. And I, as much as any other man, am in favor of having the superior position assigned to the white race. Now, you might want to ask, what does a senator running in the northern states, the state of Illinois, why would they introduce themselves this way to a more national, at least statewide, if not even national audience? What prompted that? Well, think back a few years ago, right? In the midterm elections of 2022. The Supreme Court made a fairly controversial decision when they reversed the ruling on Roe versus Wade. And as a result, in the 2022 midterm elections, every candidate, almost across the board, had to take a position on a woman's right to choose, the right of the child, right? Abortion was front and center in the midterm elections of 2022 because of what the Supreme Court ruled just prior to that election. And so in 1857, just before Lincoln ran for Senate, there was also another controversial ruling by the United States Supreme Court, and that ruling was the ruling of Dred Scott, which essentially stated that enslaved peoples were not citizens of this country and could not use the foundations, the founding documents of this nation for protection. And so in his speech, even though it was known that Abraham Lincoln was against the institution of chattel slavery, people were more concerned, how do you feel about granting rights to people of color or to Black people? And so Abraham Lincoln just had to make it very clear in his speeches that he agreed with the Dred Scott decision of 1857. Now, that decision, the Dred Scott decision, the opinion was released on March 6th of 1857. So that was yesterday, right? Yesterday was March 6th. And so I wanted I'll share the story with you, and I encourage you to read it. But yesterday was, on this day in history, the day in which the Supreme Court ruled on Dred Scott and stated that Black people essentially don't have rights under our nation's founding documents. And so, so in Abraham Lincoln, as I showed you with his quote, and that was not the only quote like that, he said something almost verbatim in the Lincoln-Douglas debates that happened in October, right? He almost said the exact same thing, worded a little bit differently. But he absolutely wanted it to be known that he agreed with the Dred Scott decision. So anyway, that was yesterday in history. I want to see who's on here. Hey, Mr. Phil Fox, Yat Eabina, thanks for joining. Good to have you here. Thanks for joining this morning. Jessica, Yat Eabina, thank you for joining. Good to have you here. Glad you can join today. I see there's a few other people who are on here. Thank you all for joining today. It's good to have you here. I want to talk a little bit about the Super Tuesday elections. And there were two very interesting, we all know, right? We all know Donald Trump pretty much swept most of the primaries on Super Tuesday, and Joe Biden pretty much swept most of the primaries for Democrats on Super Tuesday. And they are now both basically the presumptive nominees of their parties, setting up a rematch of 2020. But there were a few bright spots in that primary. One was in the state of Vermont. And I'm sharing this story from The Hill. And in the state of Vermont, Nikki Haley defeated Trump. And so she notched one victory. So she had now had two throughout the primary season. She won a victory in D.C. Last weekend, and then she won Vermont on Super Tuesday. And so Trump cannot declare that he is the unanimous selection of the Republican Party. And you may or may not have heard this, but Joe Biden also lost a primary on Super Tuesday. He was the first incumbent, according to Newsweek, to lose a primary since President Carter did in 1980. And he lost the primary in the American Samoa. There were 91 ballots cast, and Palmer, who was running against him, he's a very not well-known candidate from Maryland, and there were 91 ballots cast. 51 went to Palmer, and 40 went to Biden. And so American Samoa has 6 delegates at stake, and Palmer took 4, and Biden took 2. So, right, at least the American Samoa, District of Columbia, and Vermont were able to say, yeah, we did everything we could to keep these two status quo white landowning males, who both, I'm sure, have a nap schedule, off of the ballot, right? We did we did our best to at least make our feelings known about that. Unfortunately, 2 of those places aren't even considered states, right? The District of Columbia and American Samoa. Vermont, at least they're a state, but they're fairly small. And so obviously our voices did not have much power or authority behind them. But at least neither candidate can now declare that they were the unanimous presumptive nominee of this election. So that's at least something kind of good. The other thing I wanted to talk about just for a moment is if you watch the news, it was yesterday or a day, it was, I think, on Wednesday. So yesterday, Mitch McConnell. Now, you've already heard that he is stepping down from the leadership of the Senate, and he's not going to run again for leadership in the next Congress. And Mitch McConnell has been highly critical of Donald Trump, going back to January 6th of 2021, when he blamed President Trump for the disgraceful acts that he did on January 6th. He issued a rebuke of Trump's behavior, blaming the president for spreading wild claims of a stolen election. And he actually called Trump morally responsible for the January 6th attack. So I want to share two stories about that. The first is a more historical article. This goes back a few years, just I think February of 2021, after the insurrection. And this is the article where Mitch McConnell actually called Donald Trump morally responsible. And then this is an article from the AP yesterday, I believe it was, where Mitch McConnell came out and now is endorsing Donald Trump for president, which is a huge turnaround for him, right? And this isn't just some light thing. It's not just about a political disagreement, right? He actually called President Trump morally responsible. He blamed him for inciting the January 6th insurrection, and that is not a small matter. Not only that, right? But Trump said some incredibly racist things toward Mitch McConnell's wife after the January 6th insurrection. And this is not even a one-time thing. Right? Trump did the same thing to Ted Cruz, where he criticized the appearance of Ted Cruz's wife, and he said racist remarks about Mitch McConnell's wife. And so it was so bad that Elaine Chao actually gave a rebuke to Trump, and she was serving on his cabinet at the time, right? Or she was not his. She was serving. She was in a cabinet position, and she gave a rebuke to Donald Trump. And just like Ted Cruz turned around and endorsed Donald Trump in 2020, Mitch McConnell basically said, well, my political allegiances are more valuable than protecting the dignity of my wife. And so he is now bowing down to Donald Trump the same way Ted Cruz did. And these men sicken me, right? Donald Trump is a bully. Flat out, he's a bully. He's a racist, bigoted, narcissistic bully. And he attacks not only the people he's running against, but their family members and their wives, especially. Trump is deeply afraid of strong women. And he attacks these women. And these men say, oh, you shouldn't say that. Don't talk that way. I'm going to get you. And then later they turn around and they're bowing down to Trump and endorsing his run for president. These are weak men, in my opinion. Absolutely weak men. Where they will endorse someone who was sexist, racist, and just flat out cruel towards their spouses. And they turn around and endorse them for president. So anyway, there's a lot of stories going on out there, right? And I shared a few of those with you. Here's also the story from a few years ago in ABC when Ted Cruz turned around, he got after Trump, and then he turned around and endorsed him as well. And I seriously don't know what's wrong. Not even with the Republican Party. What's wrong with these men? What's wrong with these men? How absolutely weak are they? Of course, Trump acts this way. No one holds him accountable. Not even his own party holds him accountable. It's deeply disturbing. So that's one of the things that's going on right now. Obviously, I'm going to continue to watch, but now we're gonna just see now that both Joe Biden and Donald Trump are the presumptive nominees for their parties. We're pretty much going to be moving into general election mode now for the rest of the year, up until November. And this is going to be, first of all, very, very, very long. And second, it's going to be completely nauseating, right? If I, my advice to both Joe Biden and to Donald Trump is withdraw your name from the nominating process. For the sake of your party and for the sake of your country, withdraw your name. Donald Trump, do it because you are not fit to lead. You are absolutely not fit to lead. You are a cruel man who is so afraid of powerful people, especially powerful women, that you say incredibly racist and sexist things. You are vindictive. You display classic symptoms of narcissism. You incited an insurrection. Withdraw your name out of respect for your country and out of respect for your family. And Joe Biden, my suggestion to you also would be to withdraw your name. You are 82 years old, right? You talked about being a bridge president, of passing it off to the next generation. You are the first president, incumbent president in 40 years to lose a primary. It is very, very clear you are out of touch with your party and with where this nation wants to go. And why you are clinging to power doesn't make any sense to me. Well, knowing how white landowning men are, it makes perfect sense to me. But for the good of humanity, for the good of your nation, I ask you to withdraw your name. I would love to see a very robust campaign between some good thinking Republicans and some new blood Democrats who are able to bring some new ideas and bring a new debate into this. I really am not looking forward to a rehash of 2020. Right? And this is what we're going to do. I mean, I've said this before, right? Remember in 2020, after the George Floyd lynching, right? And we were having a debate about race and a debate about policing in our country. And Donald Trump's suggestion about what to do after George Floyd was perhaps maybe we might want to think about banning one or two types of chokeholds. And Joe Biden's solution was, let's retrain our officers to shoot people in the kneecaps instead of in the chest. That was his solution. Neither of those men and their solutions helped Jacob Blake, who was shot in the back multiple times just a little while later. Wasn't choked, nor was he shot lethally, but it was absolutely racist. These men do not have the ideas this nation needs to move forward. And I'm embarrassed that 4 years later, they are both once again the presumptive nominees of this nation. Like, what are we thinking? So it's too late to change the vote, right? That's happened. So now I just appeal to both Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Please withdraw your names. For the sake of your country, for the sake of your families, for the sake of your parties, please withdraw your names from the nominating process. Anyway, a few more things I would love to talk about. Hoka, it's their birthday. Happy birthday, Hoka. Thanks for joining today. Thanks for spending part of your birthday with me. I tip my cup of coffee to you. I hope you have a beautiful day, my. Thank you for joining, and may your day be filled with beauty and your new year be filled with beauty. A few more things I want to talk about. Well, not talk about. I want to let you know kind of what's going on. Getting back to some of my Abraham Lincoln talk. One of the things I've decided I really want to do moving forward is I want to stop doing less. I want to stop doing less kind of only speaking places where I'm inviting. I want to begin initiating speeches more. Because I usually get invited to talk about things I've done before, I've written before, I've spoken about before, and I'm doing a lot of new and creative thinking around things around decolonizing faith, as well as around Abraham Lincoln. And I want to get these messages out to places. And so one of the things I'm hoping to do more this year is to initiate some more events around the country. Go to certain cities and actually set up events, almost like I did with my book tour, but a little more organized and a little less just one long trip, but do certain events, maybe one or two a month. And there's some things I really want to engage our country with. I want to engage our country with who Abraham Lincoln was, and not just what he did as both a self-proclaimed, blatant, unapologetic white supremacist, but also one of the most genocidal presidents in our nation's history. I want to talk about that and expose that, but I also want to initiate the dialogue of what does it say about us as a nation that this is the man we honor as our greatest president, right? He's the one we all aspire to. And yet he was a blatant white supremacist and a genocidal leader. What does it say about us that this is what we call greatness as a country? I also want to, as I go out and talk about the doctrine of discovery, as you know, I'm writing a new book, Decolonizing Faith, that is looking at not how the scriptures were misused and misappropriated to do colonization, but how do the scriptures themselves lend to a colonial, vindictive, and violent worldview? And I'm to the point where my On Selling Truths content, the Doctrine of Discovery lectures I've been giving for over a decade now, are no longer satisfying to me because I know there's more to the story. It's not just about how these scriptures were misused, it's about how they are actually lending to a colonial, vindictive, and violent worldview. And so I want to take these speeches more out, and I want to find platforms where I can talk about this. And one of the things I'm hoping will turn into a place where I can talk more about this. If you saw my social media this week, you'll know that on Monday I was a guest on the Karen Hunter show. Karen Hunter has a radio show, an audience, what I've read, of about 3 million people, and it's on Sirius XM. It's on the Urban View. I think it's channel 126. And she asked me to be a guest on her show, and I was a guest. It's a 3-hour show, runs from 3 to 6 on Monday. I don't know if every day or Mondays, what it is, but I was there on Monday. But I was there the last half hour. I was scheduled to be on from 5:30 to 6. They were running behind schedule. I didn't get on until about 5:40, and we only had about 15 minutes to really kind of talk. But she really liked kind of the things we just touched on, and said she would love to have me back again. And so I'm now scheduled to be back tentatively in the first week of April. I think that first Monday in April, I'm scheduled to be back on the Karen Hunter show. And we touched on some of my content from On Selling Truths, including Abraham Lincoln, and we touched on some of my content from Decolonizing Faith. And this could be a platform where I might be able to talk about some of these things and get a broader audience kind of engaged and listening to some of these topics. So I'll let you know more as I find out the details about that interview and when that's going to be on. But it is going to be on Sirius XM, the Karen Hunter Show, channel 126, and I will give you the details as we get closer to that. It's scheduled tentatively for the first week of April. Second, if you remember last year, last summer, I actually flew out to Phoenix at one point, and I filmed a documentary, or was asked to lend my voice and some of my research to a documentary that was talking about the long walk. And um, I went out there and we did a recording in one day. So they had already made the documentary, but then one of their researchers, their consultants, heard me speak on the Navajo Nation about Abraham Lincoln's role in the Long Walk and what he was doing, not just with the Navajo people, but to kind of complete manifest destiny in both the north, central, and southern routes of the Transcontinental Railway. And they really wanted to include that narrative into the documentary. So they brought me out and they redid some filming, and then they put that story into their documentary. And the documentary is coming out. It's going to be premiered at the Phoenix Film Festival on Friday, April 12th. The film festival runs, I think, for 2 weeks or at least 10 days in April. And the film is called Bad Indian, Hiding in Antelope Canyon. And I'm going to share the link with you here about what you can find out with the schedule at the film festival. On the page I just shared, they actually have a trailer of the film. And I'm going to share a link that goes directly to that trailer as well. And so you can watch that link there. And you can see the trailer both at the film festival's website, as well as you can see it directly on the link that you can get to from the film festival's website. So I shared both of those there, and I'm really excited. I don't know how big this movie's going to get. It was very well done. They definitely invested some money in it, and I think it might have the possibility of really engaging a dialogue at a more national level, at least outside of my normal audience, my normal platform, about Abraham Lincoln, because I put Abraham Lincoln very center in what I talk about in that documentary about what he was doing when he began ethnically cleansing our Navajo people as he was trying to complete the railway. And I fit that in with the other things that he was doing throughout his term in office. And so I'm very excited. If you're in the Phoenix area, you absolutely can buy tickets for this, and I would love to have whoever can be there to join for the premiere of this film. There's talk about there being a Q&A at the festival, and I've been asked to be a part of that. So I'll be flying down, and I will be at the premiere of the film. It's actually showing 3 days. It's showing on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, April 12th, 13th, and 14th. I think it's in Mesa, Arizona, which is just outside of Phoenix. And I know I'm going to be there for the Friday premiere, and probably I'll be there throughout the whole weekend because I really want to engage with people and be around to talk with people about it. So yeah, if you're in the area, I welcome you to come down and join the conversation there. I'm looking forward to spending a few days in Phoenix. And it will be a lot of fun to engage this conversation. And then, of course, to see where this film goes and what happens with it after the film festival. And does it get a broader showing, or what kind of goes on with it? But yeah, I'm really excited that I'll be able to. There's these two things, the Karen Hunter show and now this documentary, that are going to be able to hopefully expand my audience a little bit over the next few months. And so we'll see where that goes. If you like the work I'm doing, and if you want to help me continue to get this message out there to people, I encourage you to follow me on Patreon. I made the intentional decision not to monetize my social media. So I don't monetize ads on my YouTube videos. I don't monetize my Facebook or my Twitter or my X account or anything else like that. And I do that because I don't want to give advertisers any sway or influence over what I say or what I do not say. But I did start a Patreon about 3 years ago as a way for people to subscribe to me. And on my Patreon, I do a lot to take the conversation deeper. Once a month, I have a Q&A where we just kind of have an open Q&A where people can ask questions about my work, about events, about what I've written or projects I'm working on. And we can just have a good discussion there. You don't even have to subscribe every month. You can subscribe for 1 month, and there's 3 years now worth of content up there that you can download and you can look at depending on which tier you subscribe to. So it's a great way to not only go deeper in the dialogue with me, but to financially support my work. Because especially this year, as I'm trying to take my content to some new spaces, I'm not expecting to be paid as much as I'm normally paid when I get asked to do an event. As I kind of initiate these things, a lot of times if I initiate it, it's harder to say, well, this is my fee for me to come. And so I usually end up doing these things without much of an honorarium. And so I rely more on book sales or support from people who know my work and are willing to help invest in getting the word out there. But anyway, joining my Patreon is a great way to follow that and to go deeper in the conversation there. As well as continuing to help me support the book I wrote, Unselling Truths. And you can continue to buy signed copies of Unselling Truths on my website. And you can continue to buy the 10-book special, where if you buy 10 copies of the book from my website, I will give your study group a free 45-minute virtual Q&A that we can schedule over the next year at the date of your choosing. That coincides with my schedule, where we can do a virtual Q&A on Zoom to engage and answer some questions about it. Anyway, I'm excited about things that are happening these next few weeks. I don't have a lot of speaking events coming up, but I do have a few really good opportunities to kind of broaden my audience and take some of my message to a much more public space. And I'm thrilled to see what's going to happen. I'm not so excited about the 2024 election. I'm very disappointed that we have Joe Biden and Donald Trump running again. I'm deeply disappointed in both the Democrat and the Republican parties for nominating these two men. I'm proud of the people of Vermont, the people of American Samoa, and the people of DC who voted at least to have another nominee. But I'm disappointed that's not where our country is going. And so we'll continue, though, of course, to follow the election and see what happens as we basically have a repeat now of 2020 with many of the same bad ideas and these same men who are now just 4 years older and not trying to do anything a whole lot different than they said they would do 4 years ago. So anyway, my relatives, thank you for joining me for a cup of coffee. It's good to have a chance to connect with you and talk with each of you. I hope you have a beautiful day. And Karen, I just saw your comment here. Where can I find your books? You can buy them directly from me on my website. You can get a signed copy of my book directly from me. I just put the link into the chat. But you can also buy it anywhere else you buy books. You can buy it on Amazon. You can buy it other places, and yeah, you can buy it pretty much anywhere you buy books. It's won a few awards. It got a starred review on Publishers Weekly, and so it's pretty much available anywhere you want to buy a book. You can find it, or at least get it ordered through your local bookstore, or you can buy it on Amazon. There's an audio version. There is a Kindle version, and then there's the paperback version. Actually, on Amazon, they sell a CD version of it too. I don't own the CD version of it yet, but I do have the Audible and the Kindle, and obviously I have the printed books. But yeah, so that's one place where you can get it. Is the best place is from my website. That helps my work the most. But if you want to get it from Amazon or another bookstore, your local bookstore, support your local bookstore. That's a great way to do it too. So thank you, my relatives. I hope you have a great day. Walk in beauty, and may we all learn how to walk in beauty together. Hakone.